When we talk about air pollution, we usually picture car exhaust, smoggy cityscapes, and hazy factory skylines. But in truth, some of the most insidious threats to brain health aren't floating down busy highways. They're swirling quietly inside our homes. The cozy scent of a scented candle, the sizzle of oil in a hot pan, or the stale air in a poorly ventilated room might not seem dangerous. But for millions of people, especially the elderly or chronically ill, indoor air pollution could be slowly degrading cognitive function without ever setting off a smoke alarm. It's an uncomfortable truth. Indoor air can often be more polluted than outdoor air, sometimes by a factor of 2 to 5. And the list of pollutants we're exposed to indoors is long and alarming. Cooking with gas or oil at high heat releases ultrafine particles, nitrogen dioxide, and even carbon monoxide. Candles and incense give off volatile organic compounds, VOCs, formaldehyde, and soot. Common household cleaners can emit neurotoxic fumes. If you live in a home with poor ventilation, or worse, with sealed windows in the name of energy efficiency, these pollutants don't dissipate, they concentrate. And that's where the brain comes in. Recent studies suggest that chronic exposure to indoor air pollutants, particularly fine particles, PM 2.5 and VOCs, can impair memory, reduce attention span, and even trigger or worsen depression and anxiety. These effects are amplified in the elderly, whose brains are already more vulnerable to oxidative stress and inflammation. People with pre-existing cognitive impairments or neurodegenerative diseases may be especially susceptible. The air inside your home could be accelerating your decline, and you might not even notice until it's too late. In one study, researchers found that older adults exposed to elevated levels of indoor PM 2.5 experienced a decline in working memory over just 2 years. Another investigation linked NO2 exposure from gas stoves to increased symptoms of depression and slower cognitive reaction times. And the effects aren't always reversible. Once brain tissue is inflamed or degraded, it doesn't always bounce back with a breath of fresh air. The situation is particularly troubling for populations that spend most of their time indoors: elderly people with mobility limitations, low-income individuals in poorly maintained housing, and women in traditional households who do the bulk of cooking. In many parts of the world, especially in South and Southeast Asia, indoor cooking with biomass fuels like wood or dung in poorly ventilated homes creates a cloud of pollutants far more toxic than any traffic jam. For these individuals, brain damage may begin not with aging but with dinner. Children and infants, too, are affected by indoor air quality. Their developing brains are extremely sensitive to toxins, and prolonged exposure in early years can lead to long-term deficits in learning, behavior, and emotional regulation. But while public health messaging sometimes warns about asthma or respiratory illness, the silent neurocognitive consequences are often overlooked. And then there's the cruel irony of how we try to improve our indoor environments. Air fresheners, scented sprays, odor eliminators, and paraffin candles are often marketed as solutions, but they're just pollutant delivery systems in disguise. Many release phthalates and benzene derivatives, compounds linked to hormone disruption and neural toxicity. In the pursuit of freshness, we may be fogging our brains. One major issue is that indoor air pollution is almost invisible, both literally and in terms of awareness. Most people assume that if they don't see smoke or smell anything, the air must be safe. But ultra-fine particles are, by definition, undetectable to our senses. Unless you're running a high-quality HEPA filtration system or opening your windows multiple times a day, you could be living in a low-level neurotoxic cloud without ever realizing it. And the effects can be insidious. Mental fog, irritability, difficulty focusing, subtle lapses in short-term memory. These are easy to attribute to stress, aging, or lack of sleep. But in some cases, they're your brain's way of saying, I need a window open and maybe turn off that gas burner. We don't need to panic and start living in sterile bubbles, but we do need to take indoor air quality far more seriously, especially for aging family members or anyone already dealing with cognitive decline. Improving ventilation, switching to electric stoves, avoiding synthetic air fresheners, and using air purifiers with activated carbon and HEPA filters are not just lifestyle upgrades, they're brain-saving interventions. Because when you consider how many hours of our lives are spent indoors, it's no exaggeration to say that our homes may be shaping the course of our cognition. The air we breathe while reading a book, napping on the couch, or frying an egg is either nourishing our neurons or slowly eroding them. And in a world obsessed with brain hacks, nootropic supplements, and $300 memory-enhancing devices, the simplest advice might also be the most profound. Crack a window. Your hippocampus might thank you.